There have been memos and counter-memos, finger-pointing and mudslinging. No signs of an end near for the Russia investigation in Congress, but it's time to move on, says former Secretary of State Condi Rice. She delivered that message directly to the top Democrat on the House Intel Committee.
I've spent a lot of time in Washington, and I know you've got a really hard job, and I appreciate what you're doing for the country, but I really hope you can wrap it up. The country needs to get back to business, so that's my greatest hope.
Later on The View, Adam Schiff defended the ongoing probe.
It's the job of the Congress to tell the American people what happened. Whether it reaches the standard beyond a reasonable doubt or we merely find clear and convincing evidence of collusion. So it's important, I think, that we set out the facts for the public, set out the facts about what the Russians told Papadopoulos, about what the Russians did in setting up that meeting in Trump Tower.
The secretary had more to say on the subject on Fox News this morning.
I think the American people are ready to move on. Everybody wants to know what happened. But as I also said to Congressman Schiff, the Intel committees also need to focus on what the Russians did, how they did it, because the first time, shame on them. The next time, shame on us if they can do it again. And I think there's too little attention to what they actually did and how we're going to deal with it.
So, Kimberly, that's not that she's echoing two things. One is there's a school of thought that that we just need to figure out what happened with Russia and move on. But then the other thing is making too much out of Russia, what Russia did, but not doing enough to figure out how to stop any further funding business from them in 2018.
Right. Well, of course, what you have to do is learn from the mistakes of the past, what they can do to make it more secure, make sure that they don't have influence, try to, cut them off at the pass, so to speak, in terms of their interference. So I get what she's saying. If anybody ought to be able to give good advice that we should heed and listen to, it's Condoleezza Rice as it relates to this matter.
Especially because she's a Russia expert.
Absolutely. This is her, I guess, area of expertise, right? And one of her biggest strengths is so in terms of national security. But it's important to get to the bottom of it, to understand it, to be able to combat against it more effectively and efficiently in the future. So I think you have to do, both.
Yeah, one, it's interesting. I understand why the House and Senate and their committees want to do their constitutional duty and checks and balances, but it does seem like it's being superseded by Mueller. So there's these three investigations going on at the same time. And really, I think that those two have become so partisan that people are just waiting for the Mueller investigation to wrap it up.
Well, I think the House investigation is beyond partisan. I mean, it is.
That's true. The Senate's not so bad.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think the Senate is that bad. But I think that what Condoleezza Rice had to say is very important. I think it reflects the attitudes of lots of people who think, I hear stories this day, then I hear a different story the next day, and I'm not sure what to make of any of it. I think you've said that at times. It's just like overwhelming. Like when you have the Schiff memo and you have the Nunes memo and who said what and what proves what. Do we have any bottom line here? The difficulty with it is that, of course, when people, there's a new term out that I keep hearing people use, gaslighting. That people are essentially being deluged with information, some of it intended to distract and confuse them.
Right.
And then people say, oh, I don't know what's going on with this story. It's just making my head hurt. And why don't you get to the bottom of it? So I think that impulse is there. But Condi Rice also said she knows Robert Mueller. She says she trusts Robert Mueller and that he will be very fair and do a good job. She didn't call for the end of the Mueller investigation by any means. So I think we have to be very clear about that.
Right. She is also one of the only ones from previous governments that has been willing to go actually out and say something that she really feels. Most people within the Obama administration haven't basically said anything, maybe because they're worried about things that could come out later.
Yes.
But she does speak from a position of authority, having been at the State Department, knowing the Russians, having worked in a White House, to know that our eyes should be on the important ball, which is preventing it from happening again.
We have very few statespeople in this country anymore. I feel like back in the 90s or even before then, there was these heavyweights in the Reagan administration and from previous administrations that you look to that rose above politics. Condi Rice is one of them. We don't have a lot, so it really carries a lot of weight when she says this. What I'm pretty struck by is the fact that Adam Schiff can get booked on The View. If he can get booked on The View,
There's hope
anybody
for you,
can get.
Jesse.
Yes, I should be booked next. And did you hear the people clap in the View audience
Yeah.
when she says, "Let's wrap this thing up"? I was surprised by that, but also not surprised because the USA Today poll just came out and said Russia is ranked dead last on the issue of voters for this country, and it's no surprise because it doesn't move the needle on anything. And it's been 9 months. It's cost millions of dollars. There has been no evidence put forward of collusion or obstruction. I'm not saying there isn't, but there hasn't been any yet. I believe if there was, it would have leaked by now. I want to see it wound down. I don't want to see it dropped. I just want to see it come to a rightful conclusion. I don't trust Mueller. I don't trust anybody. I trust myself. That's about it. I think he stacked the
What
deck,
kind of
so I'm a
weird thing
little.
is this? It's like a weird speech.
I'm a little worried that he stacked the deck with the people that he's brought into his team.
Wait a second. What about your mom?
My mom loves Mueller. My mom.
So you don't trust
I
your
meant,
mom?
don't you trust your mother?
No, of course. Have you read the texts? Come on, Juan. But listen, I want to know everything. I want to know about Russian interference. I want to know about potential collusion. But I also want to know about potential unmasking and also potentially putting fraud onto the FISA court by not disclosing that Hillary funded the opposition research for the warrant. I want to see it all.
Anything else?
But let's see it quickly. Let's see it quickly.
Greg,
Let's see happy hour.
I don't even know what to ask you.
It's okay. You know, you said it's been going on for 9 months. That's basically 2 porcupines because they have a gestation period of about 120 days.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
You didn't even have to look that up.
I was that was
112 days.
that was
It's like Greg's weird
What is
animal
going
facts.
on in your brain?
no. This shows you how bored I am by this topic. But there is there's 2 good points here to make. Number one, everybody wants this story to move on, except for the people who don't want it to move on. And it's the election losers. Now, remember they ruthlessly attacked Fox News and they ruthlessly attacked the Republicans over dwelling on Benghazi, in which 4 Americans died, and it was blamed on a terror attack blamed on a movie. Everybody was mocked. They had there were comedy shows, Colbert. They'd show the flaming cars, and they'd be making jokes about why are you spending so much time? Move along. Nothing happened there. Move along. But now this is their Benghazi, right? This is their thing. It's paper thin, but they're clutching on it hard. And the longer they clutch it, the more that they hope this is real, the better it is for Russia. Russia is the third wheel that is trying to break up a couple. That is America. They're like the young, attractive model that moves into your condo development right across from the bay window. A distraction that leads to destruction.
Gosh. Are you like a peeping Tom person?
Not anymore, Kimberly. Yeah, I gave it up. It's a lot of work.
Next to Gutfeld.
Hey, by the way, my name's Greg, so I couldn't be one.
Oh, good job, Tom.
Yes.
Got it. Well,
See look how exhausting this Russia
This
story
topic
is? Yes.
no, then there's this other thing. Okay, so the House Intel chair, Devin Nunes,
Oh my God.
put out another letter
Sell it, Dana.
to the attorney. Honestly, I don't get it.
The struggle.
You want me to do it? I'll do
No,
it.
I'm gonna tell you. Nope. So yesterday we had this whole back and forth between President Trump and the Attorney General, and we talk about their little spat and how it plays out in public. Then the Attorney General has dinner with his his colleagues at Central, and what does that mean, etc. Because he has said that he has instructed Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General of the Justice Department, to investigate the same thing Jesse was talking about, possible funny business with the FISA court. Okay, so that's already done. So then today we have to get another letter that lays out that Nunes thinks that there could be laws broken in the FISA thing, and he sends a letter to Jeff Sessions and demands a response. I'm like, what am I missing? He responded the day before.
Well, you know, Nunes.
Jesse?
Well, okay. I think he's lighting a fire under Jeff Sessions. He's not
Why?
happy with the fact that the IG is investigating it. I think he wants to ramp up
So
the
we should
heat
get a
and maybe
special
wants
counsel,
a
and then
special
they can
counsel.
ask Devin Nunes about all of his
A
activities.
lot of people want a special counsel because the Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide says that you have to put forth to a judge factual and verified information when you're applying for a warrant to spy an American.
I don't get it.
The dossier, which was paid for by Hillary and chock full of Russian lies, was neither verified nor substantiated. And Comey himself admitted to the Senate Intelligence Committee that it was salacious and unverified. So
This is his favorite
that is
subject.
not.
I get that.
That is not honest, and it is against the law, and that's what he's asking Sessions to look at for the seventh time.
One of the things I couldn't stand in Washington, even from when I worked on Capitol Hill, through my time at the Justice Department, over to the White House, was how people on both sides use letters to somebody else in order to get press attention. It is so annoying. I like how President Trump does it. He bypasses the whole process and just sends a tweet.
I don't know, but see, I disagree. I think it's kind of nice to bring back the letter. I love like handwriting. And when fans write to me about the show, I read every piece of fan mail, and I love the handwriting. You can almost guess the age because generally older people have better handwriting.
Absolutely.
Young people, they can't hold pens anymore. They don't know how. They look at a pen or a pencil, they get very nervous.
Do you read the fan mail that comes from people cutting out letters in the newspaper?
Sometimes I do. I like it when they write outside the envelope like they've had another thought. So they mail you a letter and then they keep writing outside.
You know who does that?
Who?
Jail mail.
Oh, yes. Well, you get a lot of jail mail.
I think you get the most jail mail of anyone.
I get the most, and they all draw pictures of me. But I mean, they're pretty good
and you
pictures.
can spell mail two ways.
Yeah. It's interesting, right?
All right, well, this has been great start to the show. Next, President Trump's controversial suggestion to
don't even go to jail. You know, if you shoot one person, they give you life, they give you the death penalty. These people can kill 2,000, 3,000 people, and nothing happens to them. Some countries have a very, very tough penalty, the ultimate penalty. And by the way, they have much less of a drug problem than we do. So we're going to have to be very strong on penalties.
Okay, so Greg, this is something we've talked about, a lot on this show and have been covering this, and it does seem to be really generating the right amount of national attention and focus. This is something that the president cared deeply about and really focused on in the campaign, and now this is the follow-through.
Well, I say, it's fine to go after the dealers, but you have to leave the patients and the pharmaceutical companies alone who are helping the patients. Suing a pharmaceutical company for opioid abuse, it's like suing a gun company because a gun was stolen and used in a robbery. If there is illegal drug use, is not the problem. It is not caused by the pharmacies. There's a lot of, you don't want to handicap a system based on the abuse of a few. We've used that philosophy with everything, from driving to drugs to firearms. So there's a myth about this opioid abuse. They think it's driven by patients who are using prescribed drugs. That's not the case. The rate of addiction is only 2% of the 87 million people that use these drugs. So the drug is being the prescription drug is being denigrated when in fact it's helping millions of cancer patients and people with pain disorders. The misuse of opioids is the same person who misuses them, 75%, 3/4 of them misuse other drugs. Also illegal drugs, okay? So the overdoses are usually due to street drugs, not prescription medications. But I think the danger here is we're conflating it to this whole thing of opioids, and so doctors are scared of prescribing it to their sick patients because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble, and so the patients can't get the drugs that they need. We're punishing again. It's like the gun argument. We are punishing law-abiding individuals. These people are sick and they're not getting their drugs because people are freaking out. It's like a teacher who punishes an entire classroom because there's one kid that's screwing up.
Was that kid?
Yeah, I knew it was you. I knew it was you. But
so bad about
do not criminalize the law-abiding patient or criminalize the drug that helps them get through their days. You can't do that. So I'm okay with him going after the dealers. I think that's important. But separate it.
All right, so separate it out. Dana, what's your takeaway?
Well, I think that, again, as he said something again this week about a law enforcement issue. Like, it would make sense. Like, if you had stiffer penalties for drug dealers, then maybe you wouldn't have this problem. Now, places like the Philippines and that dictator, Duterte, who really likes President Trump, I mean, he does this. And it leads to very dangerous things, because then how do you get the due process, as we've been talking about all week? What if innocent people are being put to death and they weren't really the ones dealing the drugs. So I agree there are law enforcement issues that have to take place. I am surprised that we are March 2018 and we're still talking about possible things that maybe will happen along the way, because during the campaign, both in 2015, starting in 2015 with the primary, this was the #1 topic. And states like New Hampshire that helped bring President Trump to that electoral college victory, that's often a purple state, could go either way. He wins it handily. And I think that they really expected a little bit more and faster. There is legislation that just is going to advance, is going to advance on the House first, and then Senator Portman has it in the Senate. It would take the $25 million pot of money for evidence-based treatment and bump it up to $300 million. Absolutely significant, but it has to be based on evidence. Unfortunately, right now, only about 20% of the treatments that we have are long-term effective. So we have a lot of investment that needs to be made.
Yeah, investment, research, perhaps even like some kind of clinical trials, anything to try to help people to get the assistance. So many people really want to, beat this drug addiction and get off of these drugs that really are just life-ending.
I'll just say this. The president's made a lot of very important promises throughout the campaign in the last year. Opioids, now the gun issue. And he's made these promises to the faces of family members that have been afflicted by tragedy. And he's got the steel tariff thing he'll throw in there, and he's got the immigration thing still floating around. It's just a lot of very important issues that people get very emotional about and strike home for a lot of families. It's kind of still unsolved, but he's kind of able to every once in a while throw it back onto the front stage. There needs to be so much money and so much focus on each one of these things. I don't see how you can focus like a laser on such an issue without kind of putting these other issues to the side. So far, he's been able to do it. But, in a year from now, are we going to have the wall? Are we going to have the opioid crisis solution? Are we going to have the gun control situation settled? I don't know, but there's so many things going on right now and swirling around. It's kind of hard to tell. And in the incarceration thing, I say, increase the penalties, but I don't think you should, fry some guy in the chair for selling dope.
Okay, Juan, but what do you think of this?
Well, I'm just struck. I mean, this week the president had an event at the White House, and he had among the people there a friend from New York whose son died from this affliction, and he, in fact, invited his friend to come up and gave him a hug and said, speak. And what the friend said when he was given the microphone was, my kid wasn't buying drugs from any guy on the corner. He was buying it on the internet from pharmaceutical companies. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting that he would say it so explicitly, because the pharmaceutical companies have been pushing aggressively in terms of advertising, outreach to doctors, pushing, and there was one article I saw, some small county in West Virginia deluged with this stuff. And then you have an inexplicable number of people dying and no consequences for the pharmaceutical companies. So now, somehow, President Trump thinks, yeah, I'm going to go after people who are selling drugs, apparently thinks illegal drugs. But here's what we know from the 1980s, that you can increase the penalties, you can increase the number of people in jail, and it doesn't drive down either the availability or the cost of the drugs. In fact, there's always another person to sell the drugs.
It's actually interesting because that's actually right now we're dealing with prison reform,
yes,
which is basically based on what happened.
What happened then? Yeah. And his own Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, who comes from Indiana, worked with Vice President Pence in Indiana, has said quite clearly, we need to change the strategy, do more in terms of mental health, do more in terms of reining in these pharmaceutical companies. So I don't understand. It seems to me just autocratic. It's like when he said the other day, oh yeah, don't worry about the due process, take the guns. And that set off the conservatives. And now he's saying, just go ahead and kill these people.
Street drugs. We can, by the way, take a look at Portugal and see how they deal with drugs.
Yeah.
It's an interesting and refreshing, positive story. Anyway.
Okay. Well, you can imagine a lot of people are very concerned about this, to lose a loved one, a family member, a child to opioid addiction. It's harrowing. Don't recover from it. Lots of news out of the White House this week, but the press secretary is dismissing all the cries about chaos next.
It's been another wild week at the White House. Hope Hicks is out. The president's son-in-law lost his top-secret clearance. Rumors of a Trump family clash with the chief of staff, and reports that the national security advisor could be the next to go. Is this reality TV or what? The media points to a White House in chaos.
A whole lot of chaos and upheaval in the White House.
Chaos at the White House.
Coming up, today's episode of White House Chaos.
Are we looking at a White House in chaos? A level of chaos that is having ripple effects around the West Wing, around the country, around the world.
It walks like chaos, it talks like chaos, and it looks like chaos.
Wow. The White House, of course, has a very different interpretation of chaos.
The chaos that I see most this morning, I left 3 preschoolers and a bunch of flashlights with the power out at my house. It was pretty chaotic, and certainly far more chaotic early this morning than when I got to the office. The bottom line is, if this is chaos, I think the American people are glad for it, because we just passed the biggest tax cuts in history. ISIS is on the run. We're rebuilding our military. We're rebuilding the judiciary. If they want to call it chaos, fine, but we call it success and productivity, and we're going to keep plugging along.
So the part that surprises me is that, Jesse, people like Anthony Scaramucci, who work for the president, as you all know, says, oh, morale inside is terrible, and even more people are going to leave soon.
Maybe he knows something I don't know. I'm not sure if
I find that hard to believe. You know everything.
Well said, Greg. Listen, we all have chaos in our lives. You do, I do, we all do at this table. This country's always been a chaotic country.
Captain
Ask
Chaos.
anybody.
Jesse.
They all have drama. The White House has drama. That's no surprise. They're like a football team. You know the football team that, they turn the ball over a lot. They give up a bunch of sacks. The quarterbacks, throwing picks and everything like that. But they always come back in the fourth quarter, put points on the board, and come away with the win. And this is how this White House has been. Through all the chaos, they get a lot of great stuff done when it comes to judges, taxes, and ISIS being defeated. But listen, there was no chaos in the Hillary campaign. She got clobbered. There was no chaos in the Obama White House, mostly because the media didn't cause any chaos for them. But then you had no wage growth, and ISIS grew. So Trump is a chaos kind of guy. He thrives on it. A lot of it's personnel, but a lot of it is self-inflicted, I would agree, but it's a feeding frenzy with the press. And come on, everybody knows they're trying to take everybody out they can. If it's the White House communications director, the chief of staff, someone that ordered an expensive table, blood is in the water. So they're just trying to survive.
So, Kimberly, let me ask you something very specific, which is that, as you know, President Trump announced that he plans to impose some tariffs. And then the stock market had a terrible time this week. Is that chaos, or what's, because it said that there was no review at the White House, the lawyers hadn't looked at it, and then Gary Cohn, his economic advisor, apparently said he might leave beyond.
Well, right. So that was part of the Captain Chaos theory today, where they were like, okay, is Gary Cohn staying? Is McMaster staying? Kelly's out. So it was like 3 people today with the big discussion that have dominated the news cycle. So look, I mean, I'm quite certain there will be changes coming forward, but nevertheless, I mean, most people don't stay in for the full term or 2 terms, but people certainly have their prerogative. If Gary Cohn wants to leave, and he'll leave.
Okay.
I don't know if the president is going to ask him to leave. I think he's kind of just making his own mind up.
How do you feel about this? I was going to ask you about McMaster, who's the national security advisor. The big talk is that he's about to leave. Of course, the White House denies that.
Well, yeah, not only did the White House deny it, then the president and McMaster watched a movie together last night, and it was an urgent alert.
What'd they say?
I don't know. I didn't bother looking at it, but
A Few Good Men.
of which McMaster is certainly one. And I think that if you are looking for somebody who is an American hero and a patriot, there are plenty of them all throughout the administration, including McMaster. After that report on NBC, which landed at 4 o'clock, at about 6:25, there was a statement from Michael Anton, the National Security Council spokesperson, who said, I was just in the Oval Office with the president and McMaster, and he said he has full confidence in McMaster. I think on the chaos front, it would be great if Sarah Sanders never had to answer a question like that. But she does, and she handles it well. And I think that in some cases, like, we didn't have much turnover in the Bush White House, right? It was like 6%. Wow. And so, but there was also, remember, there was 9/11. And that had a way of focusing the mind in those years, and you felt so dedicated in wanting to stay. Not that everybody stayed for the full 8 years, but there was a lot of people that did. So it does look like there's a lot of turnover, and a lot of people think, well, if there's turnover, there must be chaos. It doesn't mean that you can't actually make sure all the trains are running on time at the White House. It just takes a lot more work.
So this weekend are the Oscars, so I'm going to Greg to ask, what movie do you think you would have watched with McMasters? Would it have been Mr. Magoo?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Is Mr. Magoo a movie?
No, you know what? I think Dunkirk was a fantastic film. Or
Darkest Hour? Darkest
I
Hour.
haven't seen that yet. I liked Brawl in Prison Cell 99 with Vince Vaughn. Is that what it's called? Prison Cell 99? Fantastic. But anyway.
Wait, that would be like a male bonding between
Yes, exactly.
Trump and
All right, Juan, let me address the actual topic.
Go ahead.
My God. All right. You know what happens? You know what happens under a microscope?
Diva news.
All right, without a microscope, you just see a drop of sweat. But the moment you put that on the slide, you see a bustling civilization. So that's what's happening right now. We are seeing a White House under a microscope. So what generally with Obama, you didn't see anything because nobody bothered to look. They were, again, there was an 8-year hibernation, or what I like to call Obama-tose. The media was Obama-tose. Now they're awake. They finally went to the gym. They're getting back in shape. That's what this is for them. So right now, everything, and Trump does assist them because this is a saran wrap, White House. It's the most transparent White House in history. So he makes it easier for them. I know we have to go, but, he asked me about movies, producers. What am I going to do?
I did.
No, you don't have to apologize to me. Nobody can hear you at home. All right, let's go.
You cool?
Yeah, I'm great.
All right.
I love you, Juan.
The Fastest 7 headed right at you with the young JW.
Welcome back. Time for the fastest 7 minutes on television. 3 stories, 7 minutes. Let's go. First up, nothing like an early morning Twitter feud between Alec Baldwin and President Trump. It all started over this.
It's been a big week, folks. We're getting rid of everything Obama did. Healthcare, the Iran deal. And we're ripping out all the vegetables in Michelle Obama's garden and planting McNuggets.
In a new interview, Baldwin laments his Trump impersonation on SNL is taking a toll. Quote, every time I do it now, it's like agony. Agony. I just can't. Mr. Trump had this amusing response. Quote, Alec Baldwin, whose dying mediocre career was saved by his terrible impersonation of me on SNL, now says playing me was agony. Alec, it was agony for those who were forced to watch. Bring back Daryl Hammond, funnier and a far greater talent. Okay, Greg. I mean, this happens like every other month.
It's hilarious. By the way, Trump is the best thing that ever happened to Alec Baldwin and gave him a second career. True. And I will say Alec Baldwin is pretty good at it, but he's not as good as the real thing. And that is the problem when you're impersonating somebody who's kind of a character. I mean, Trump is ice cream. Alec Baldwin is ice milk. Remember when you were a kid, you knew the difference between ice cream and ice milk, and that's ice milk. And then when you see Trump, you go, yep, that's ice cream.
What do you think?
Well, I agree that President Trump is funnier than Alec Baldwin and more entertaining and easier to listen to. But I would also say that I watched one episode of Our Cartoon President that Stephen Colbert has put out, and the imitation of President Trump is terrible. It's not even funny. The show's not as funny as it could be funny. Like satire is funny to me, but this wasn't good.
All right, Juan.
I think Baldwin won an Emmy last year for his impersonation of President Trump. But I see President Trump wants Daryl Hammond back. I'm not sure SNL would agree with that assessment. But, to me, I just think it's all in fun. But apparently, why is the president paying attention to this? Why is he tweeting about it? I have no idea.
Where have you been, Juan? This is what he does.
This is what
he's us.
This was fun.
He's
It's awesome. I really enjoyed this segment. I think it's funny. I like what he writes back, and then he's poking the cage at Alex. I think it's good. I mean, isn't life hard enough? Don't you want a few laughs, Juan, every once in a while?
Yeah, I like laughs. I also like a president who might impose sanctions on Russia.
Okay, just don't ruin Fastest 7, Juan. Next up, follow-up to Envelope Gate. Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway could be getting another shot to present the Best Picture award after the biggest disaster in Oscar history. They were spotted at rehearsals for Sunday's show saying, presenting is better the second time around. Last year's ceremony ended in a full-blown tornado after Beatty and Dunaway were handed the wrong card that led them to name La La Land as Best Picture instead of Moonlight. Kimberly, you remember that. That was the best part about the whole night.
Everyone's like still talking about it, right? It's like, so let's see what happens. It was like, remember when Steve Harvey
that was
the
great.
wrong, like Miss Universe.
That was great.
That was one of my favorites as well. So yeah, we'll have to tune in tomorrow for the Mulligan.
You're going to be watching the Oscars?
Or Sunday.
You know, I watch a little bit of it. I always like to find out who wins. So I was saying to Greg, I think they could have watched Darkest Hour, because that's my pick for the best actor. Who's Gary Oldman, I think?
Yeah.
Oldman.
Oldman. I think he's excellent. I think that was excellent.
Okay. Dana.
Well, everyone thought at first that these two, that they were the ones who had screwed up at the beginning, right? For like those first 30 minutes. And then finally the next morning, everyone realizes what happened and they were handled the wrong card. So I think it's good they're getting a second chance.
Blame the producers, right?
No.
Greg?
You know what I find interesting about this couple is the impact that they've had on pop culture, because the reason why they're paired together is they played Bonnie and Clyde. That was back in the 60s. I'm pretty sure that might have been the first movie where they made murderous villains look sexy. Like Bonnie and Clyde were killers. They were bank robbers. They weren't attractive. But what they did was they took two of the hottest people in Hollywood and they had them play bad people. And that began the postmodern love affair with violence. It led to the Quentin Tarantino Reservoir Dogs scene where they play, Stealer's Wheel as they're mutilating a police officer. It led to the point where you could sit there and go, evil's not so evil because it's kind of sexy and attractive. And it leads to Rolling Stone putting a bomber on the cover. It's the constant, it is the love affair with something that is dark and evil in society. That's my theory anyway.
Wow,
we'll be right back.
Greg is going deep with this. All right. And finally, what a breakup. The mayor of New York got a big surprise yesterday when the guy he hired to run his city schools pulled out of the job on live TV.
I am breaking an agreement between adults to honor an agreement and a pact I have with the children of Miami. I underestimated the emotional tug, the level of commitment, the power that crying members of the community have had on me.
Bill de Blasio was blindsided.
You can imagine how surprised I was to get a phone call from him a few hours ago. He had already accepted the job and we had put it out publicly with his agreement. He told me repeatedly this was his dream job. Something else happened here, and maybe you guys can figure out what it is.
He's always getting embarrassed, Bill de Blasio.
You know what? This guy is like, I can't work for the guy. There's no way they're going to get me back on. If I back out publicly, it's over.
Yeah.
It was a good move on his part.
Yeah.
Can't work for de Blasio.
Yeah, public breakups are final.
Yes.
You can't recover from
Do it in
that.
a restaurant.
Juan?
Well, in D.C.,
Crowded.
D.C. just lost its school superintendent. It's hard to find a good school superintendent, and I just hope New York City gets a great one. I went to public schools here, and they need strong...
Yeah, look how you turned out.
Well, that's right. I'm here to school you.
Very good, Juan. Kimberly?
Yeah, look, if his heart's not in it, he's not going to do the job. Children deserve the best, and I wouldn't want to work for Big Bird de Blasio either.
Big Bird. All right, Facebook Friday, when the 5 returns.
Hello, welcome back to Facebook Friday.
Hello.
We'll be here. All right, from Susan P. This is a great question. You all survive a plane crash and end up on a deserted island. What would each of your roles be on that island in order to survive? Dana?
In order to survive.
Yeah, so let's say we're all there and we all have a role. What would be your role?
Keeping everyone on task.
Interesting.
Wait,
So
you get your manager?
Your manager?
What is that? That's not a role. You just boss people around on the island?
That's
Would you
fantastic.
rather me cook? I'm not a good cook.
Yeah, that's
He wants to
probably
make
true.
sure nobody
Boy, this sounds like a wife.
kills each other.
Everyone needs a wife, Juan.
I agree.
Jesse,
Give me your
what would be
I
your
give you
role?
a
Probably don't know this, but I'm quite proficient in the outdoors.
Really?
My parents sent me to all these camps so that I can make fires and build.
No, they wanted you out of the
lean-to
house.
huts. I've spearfished.
Oh,
I've done
really?
stuff like that. So
Survivalist.
yeah, I'll help you guys out.
Yeah, but you eat a lot, so you're going to cut into my food.
Yeah, what
so
you
this is
kill,
gonna
you
be a
eat yourself.
problem.
Juan, do you have a role?
Well, by the way, I think your parents did you a favor. That's very practical education.
Yeah, I use those skills all the time here in New York.
Yeah, so be it. But anyway, I was thinking we're going to have some shelter.
Yes.
So I could try to help us in terms of building something.
You build stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Kind of
do it
handy with the
now.
hammer?
No, but I could try.
What about you, Kimberly?
Well, I'll be in charge of Kimberly's food court. Because then I guarantee that I'll get some food. Because you can't do food court without food. So I'll be living and laughing and loving.
I realize this is basically your you have to create civilization again.
Yeah.
And what do you do when you create civilization? You got to create an escape. So I would be in charge of figuring out how to reinvent alcohol on the island by like boiling different leaves and finding unusual fruits and kind of creating a kind of beer.
I thought you said you were going to be in charge of continuing the civilization.
Civilization.
Oh my God.
Please.
I thought that's what you said.
Oh, no.
You know what? Get me off that island.
Get me off that island. All right.
God.
Oh, another. This is from Suzanne C. Interesting question. Who or what intimidates you?
Me.
All right. Kimberly, you.
I intimidate you.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
No, but what I'm asking, what
Nothing intimidates me.
Nothing intimidates you? All right. Jesse.
Mostly wild animals like squirrels or possums or raccoons.
You just said you were an outdoorsman.
Yeah, but I don't like those animals. I want to kill them, but they terrify me. And you don't eat varmints.
You don't eat varmints unless you have to.
He's like a cartoon character.
He really is. Water's World is crazy. Jesse? Juan?
Looney Tunes.
A powerful guy with a straight jab. That would hurt.
Yeah, boxer.
That would hurt.
But don't you know how to box?
I do, but there are people who are much bigger and better.
You got to be faster. Lightning hands.
I would have to have
Dana,
you.
what intimidates you?
I kind of went in a different direction, but fear of disappointing others.
Oh, that's
Interesting.
good.
Yeah, I don't know if that's intimidating.
That's not really.
That's a disappointing answer, Dan.
Yeah, I think you've disappointed us right now.
I don't care about your.
Oh, that's not
I'm
nice.
disappoint you.
I'm going to do the Dana eye roll now.
People.
Yeah.
Angry people.
Oh, you've seen it?
Is that intimidating?
Have you watched back the eye roll?
No,
Oh, it's a gift that keeps
eye roll
on giving.
is done in love.
All right, I got to go. What intimidates me? Shelves.
Because they're too high?
Yes, shelves. I see shelves. I go, not for me. That's why everything in my apartment's on the floor.
Oh, my God.
One more thing is up next.
It's time for one more thing. Juan.
Billy Graham's funeral was held today in Charlotte, North Carolina. His family had a private session, including the president and vice president. It was held under a tent, a throwback to the Come As You Are Los Angeles crusade of the 40s that made Billy Graham a national superstar. Among the guests were evangelist Rick Warren and Joel Osteen. In my last book, I put Graham on the cover as part of a new Mount Rushmore. Why? Because he changed not only American religious practices, but American politics. The lifelong Democrat brought white evangelicals to the Republican Party. He made churchgoers into a political constituency, and today, the South, as you know, heavily Republican. Billy Graham was a game changer. May he rest in peace.
Indeed. All right, I'll go next. There's a new exhibit at the Bush Center in Dallas that former First Lady Laura Bush is in charge of, and our own Casey Stegall down in Dallas went and did an interview with her. It's all about the First Lady's impacts on American history. They call the First Lady's job a role without a rule book, and they look at all the previous First Ladies. It's going on through the fall, and Casey was supposed to be on my show yesterday, and it got cut, but he cut the package anyway for me, and here's a little bit of it.
She became a champion for making education available to women all over, but in Afghanistan particularly, where it was once illegal for girls to learn. How did that change your life?
I would have never expected to spend any time working with women in Afghanistan, but of course it's been really one of the most satisfying parts.
So if you're in Dallas or you head there, it's a good exhibit to go see. Kimberly. Kimberly.
Thank you so much. All right, it's time for Kimberly's Food Court. Kimberly's Food Court, half eaten already. Okay, so today, Food Court would like to honor a true food patriot. Don Gorski, who was on track to eat an earth-shattering 30,000 McDonald's Big Macs by May. So he started eating 2 Big Macs every day since May 17th, 1972. Ooh. Yeah, I think he's going to have me beat. That's about 14 Big Macs a week. And it is an honor to have a Big Mac here. No onions. You know how I like it. Thank you, Shauna Rourke.
Wow.
Why is he doing this? Is this for a charity?
No, it's a long-hailed charity.
All right, Greg, you're next.
Record.
But that is, we just assume that's normal? Okay, fine. I just want to
McDonald's is a great company.
No,
Gutfeld.
I'm just saying, it's just kind of strange. Anyway,
Oh my
Greg
God,
Gutfeld Show
what's
Saturday, 10 p.m. We got a great crew. We got comedian Jim Florentine, comedian Tom Shillue. You got Tyrus, you got Kat, 10 p.m. Saturday. You're going to love it.
I think
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this Waters world. It turned out okay, we think. We have the Mooch. We have Tommy Lahren. We have Diamond and Silk. I had a great video I was going to show you guys, but we're not going to show it. You're just going to have to tune in at 8 o'clock on Saturday night to see how it all goes down.
That's a very good tease. I will be tuning in.
Not as good as
All
what I
right.
had.
Set your DVRs. Never miss an episode of The Five. Have a great weekend. Special report up next with Mr. Brett Baer.